Today on our 2009 Chevrolet Kodiak, also known as the TopKick, we're going to be installing the REDARC Tow-Pro Elite Trailer Brake Controller. On most of your traditional styles, they kind of get in the way. You might hit your knee on it when getting in and out of the vehicle. Moving around to adjust the pedals, you might hit it. Here, it's elegantly mounted inside your dash. It's got all of your adjustments for your brake sensitivity. The REDARC Brake Controller is going to send a signal to your 7-way connector, providing a trailer brake control signal to apply your trailer brakes. There are two modes that it can do this in. Proportional mode, in which, depending on the adjustment of your knob and the amount of brake force applied, it detects the inertia of the vehicle and proportionally applies the trailer brakes. So the harder you press the pedal and the more inertia is detected, the harder your trailer brakes will be applied. Also in proportional mode, you can press down on the button and this will apply braking power to the trailer brakes only. Now if you notice, the light will start to turn red. The more red the light is, the harder it is applying the brakes. This can be adjusted with your knob. The other mode is the user-controlled mode. To set it to this mode, set your knob to 0, apply the trailer brakes, press the knob twice quickly, and release the brakes. The light now is green, indicating that it's in user-controlled mode. In the user-controlled mode, when you press the brakes, trailer brakes are applied, determined by the amount set on your knob. It does not detect the inertia or the amount of braking force by the vehicle. This can be indicated by the redness of the LED when setting your brake controller. It can also activate only the trailer brakes and not your vehicle by pressing down the button on the knob. This will send the force to your trailer brakes based on the adjustment set. This is also indicated how hard the brakes are being applied by the color of the LED. More red, harder braking power. A park brake feature is built in. If it detects braking power for longer than 3 seconds, it will intelligently determine if braking on your trailer is required to keep the vehicle from rolling forward. It will then adjust as necessary and potentially down to 0 if it determines that the vehicle does not require any brake force to prevent the vehicle from going into motion. So this way, if you're sitting on flat ground with your park brake applied, it will not use excessive force on your brakes in the back and use up unnecessary energy to hold the brakes if it determines it doesn't need to. It will work with both electric and electric hydraulic braking systems for your trailer. It also works with 12-volt and 24-volt electrical systems, with no need for any external devices. The LED has many other colors for troubleshooting. Refer to your owner's manual to determine the fault that LED color is representing. Now that we've gone over some of the features, let's show you how to get it installed. Now before you install your brake controller, you're going to want to make sure you have a 7-pole connector so you can utilize it. Now if you're missing a 7-pole connector, or in our case if you have some circuits that are missing, you can use part number ETBC7 to complete those circuits, and that also includes the 7-pole connector. Now our 7-way already has all of our lights wired up, however it's missing the power wire and the brake controller signal wire, so we're going to have to run those wires. Now on our Kodiak here, there is a GM bulletin, number 66, which you can find online by using your favorite search engine and just searching for GM Bulletin 66. This bulletin explains where an upfitter connector is located underneath the vehicle and the circuits on those connectors we're going to need to use to complete our brake controller installation. So here we are under our vehicle just behind the cab. On our passenger side frame rail, you'll locate your upfitter connector. This is where we can tap in to get our power, ground, and brake signal wires. Now since our vehicle already has its 7-way connector run, just minus a couple wires, we're going to complete that first. Start by cutting back a little bit of your wire if you purchased kit ETBC7. Then you can just trim that off. We can strip back some of our wire to connect to our existing circuits. We're going to be installing butt connectors on our wiring. These are going to be upgraded from the ones that come in kit ETBC7 to be a heat shrink butt connector, as these are going to live outside the vehicle. You can pick some of these up at etrailer.com with part number DW05745-5. Now, after testing our 7-way, we were missing our power and our brake controller wire. Those are already run, they're just not connected to the vehicle. We're going to use the black circuit on our wiring from the ETBC7 kit and connect it to our 12-volt power. Then we're going to take our white wire and connect that to our brake control circuit. Now we'll shrink down our butt connectors using a heat gun. Now we're going to take our wires and route it up to the front of the vehicle. Now we've got our wiring run here. We'll show you how we've routed it. Now it is going to differ on your vehicle depending on the length of your vehicle, what kind of upfitter or other modifications have already been performed. But we're just going to follow the frame rail right down, following all the existing wiring that's already there, zip tying it up to that wiring, making sure we're staying clear of any suspension components, other moving parts, and heat components such as your exhaust. And follow the wiring right up to our power and ground junction block under the hood. Now we're going to run some wire from our brake controller in the vehicle, power and ground, over to our battery. Now we didn't have enough wire included in our ETBC7 kit to complete the job, so we've got some additional wire here which can be found at etrailer.com with part number ETBCXW. To route our wires into the cabin, we're going to go through one of the grommets in the firewall. You just pull outward on the grommet, and that will expose our grommet here. Once you've got your grommet removed, pull back on the outside cover. This is the sound isolator. We're going to separate that from our inner grommet. Our inner grommet here will just, if there's not already a notch cut, you have to cut yourself a notch. There's already one cut here, so we're just going to slide it off our wiring so we can run it through. Now we're going to take our extra wire, run it through the sound insulator first. Now, if you have trouble getting it through the sound insulator, it is okay to make a small incision on the back side of it. Our grommet's going to seal the inside, and on our sound insulator is going to seal the outside. So the small nipple here at the back, we can open it up if we need to. Here we're on the inside now, under the driver's side. We're going to pull our wire through the opening where you remove the grommet. Just make sure you've got enough wire pulled through so you can mount it under the dash. The box on this brake controller is separate from the actuator knob, so you can hide it back underneath your dash and mount your actuator knob, which is much smaller than your typical brake controller, on another location on your dash. Now we've got our wire run inside, and run your wire over to the battery. Again, this is our power and ground to our brake controller. Now to maximize the efficiency of the wire available in our kit, we're going to mount our circuit breakers so we can make the most appropriate determination on wire length. We're going to mount these right here on the firewall towards the top. We're going to be using the 30 and the 40 amp circuit breaker from the kit. We're going to mount our 30 amp further towards the driver's side. You'll mount your circuit breakers using the self-tapping screws provided in the kit with a 1/4 inch socket. Now that we've got both of our circuit breakers mounted, we're going to go ahead and hook those up so we can maximize our wire length. Go ahead and strip back the coating on your wiring. Strip back the sheathing that encloses your wiring. Once you've got it stripped back, just trim off that excess. Our black wire is going to run to power to our brake controller, while the white wire is going to run to ground to the brake controller. So we can go ahead and snip our black wire here, as it's going to mount to power from our circuit breaker. Strip back some of your black wire, and connect one of the small eyelets from your kit to it. You'll then connect the black wire to the silver post on the 30 amp circuit breaker. The silver posts on your circuit breaker go to the components, while the copper posts will go to battery positive. You'll tighten this down using a 3/8" wrench. Now we're going to run our white wire to ground. Go ahead and cut that off. And we're going to run it to the ground post here. Go ahead and disconnect your ground wire using a 13mm socket or wrench. Now strip back some of your white wire and crimp on the large eyelet included in the ETBC7 kit. And reconnect the ground. Now that our brake controller power and ground have been connected, we're going to use our other harness we had run from our 7-way connector, and we're going to strip it back. And slice off the excess. Our black wire ran to power on our 7-pole connector. So line that up with the length you need, give yourself a little excess, and then cut it off. Now we're going to go ahead and strip this back just like we did with our other one and connect it to the same silver terminal just like we did in our 30 amp. However, this is going to go to our 40 amp. Now our white wire, we had hooked this to our brake controller signal that goes to our 7-way connector. Now this isn't going to be enough to reach all the way over to our brake controller. So the white wire that we had just cut off of our ground circuit to our brake controller, we're going to use that to extend this wire. Go ahead and strip back an end on each of the lengths of white wire. Then crimp on a butt connector, preferably a heat shrink as this is outside the vehicle. Into the other white wire to connect those two together. And now heat shrink this down just like we did before. Now we're going to take our white wire following the gray circuit into the grommet, into the cab, right along where we had run our other wires to our brake controller. Now pull your white wire through the hole in the grommet and down. Now it's a good idea at this time to mark this white wire because this is our brake controller signal wire. This will mate up to a blue wire on your brake controller harness. So we've got ourselves a blue marker here and we're just going to color that in so we know this connects to the blue wire. Now we're back underneath at our upfitter connector. We're going to be connecting to the signal wire. This goes to pin E on the connector, which is the light blue wire here. Go ahead and slide your splice connector included in the ETBC7 kit over it. And then attach another length of wire to it. You can get some more wire at etrailer.com using part number 16-1-1. To reach our brake controller from our connector here, you're going to need about 12 to 15 feet of wire. Having a little bit of excess is always good to prevent tugging on the wire and for future repairs that may need to be made. Once you've got your wires in, just squeeze the metal splice down over the wire and close the locking tab shut. Now we can route our brake signal wire up to our brake controller. Now when routing your signal wire into your cab, it's best to follow the gray wire that we routed before, right up under the hood and into the cab through the grommet. Now we've got all of our wires run for our brake controller. We're going to now mount our brake controller so we know where to route and run our wires. We're going to be mounting that under the dash. We'll be using some self-tapping screws to mount it. These don't come included in the kit, but can be found on our website at etrailer.com. We're going to be mounting our control box under our dash here. Go ahead and get it in place. Do check before you mount your controller that there's no wires behind it. I've already inspected this location. We've mounted our control box here. We oriented it. The four-way connector that goes to the wires we've run up to the vehicle is facing towards the rear of the vehicle, and our Ethernet connector that goes to our switch is facing towards the front of the vehicle. Make sure that you leave room for clearance to plug these connectors in when mounting it. Now is a good time to find a suitable location for your control knob. We're going to be mounting ours here where this amber lamp is. This lamp's not connected on the vehicle, and this is where the customer would like it to be placed. Now we already have a hole drilled here where our customer would like it to mount. But if you didn't, you would want to drill a 10mm hole to mount your knob through, and then 7.5mm from the center of that hole, straight up, you want to drill a 3.5mm hole for the pilot here. That'll hold your knob in place to prevent it from turning when you turn the control knob. Now we're going to drill our 3.5mm hole. And we're ready to place our knob. Run your switch up and put it in place. Now that your switch is in place, take your washer with the tang and hole facing up and thread it into place. And tighten it down using a 12mm wrench. Now that you've got your knob mounted in place, turn it fully counterclockwise and slide your knob on, lining up with the tang and 0. With everything in place, go ahead and plug in the included Ethernet cable with your Redarc Brake Controller. One goes to the switch and the other goes to the control box. You can use either the angled end or the straight end on either component, whichever works better for your application. We plugged our angled end into our switch and our straight end into our control box. Now we're ready to connect our four-way connector to the wires we ran up to the vehicle. We'll be connecting our green wire that went from our brake signal to our red wire on our four-way connector. Go ahead and strip some back. Strip some back on this one. And you can use the butt connectors included in your ETBC7 kit. These are not heat shrink butt connectors as we're inside the vehicle, so it's not necessary. Here it's less susceptible to corrosion and the elements on the outside. Now we'll connect our white wire, which is our brake controller wire that goes to our 7-way connector that we marked with the blue marker earlier, to the blue wire on our 4-way connector. Now we'll peel back some of the gray sheathing so we can connect our white and black wires that go from the battery and to ground to our power and ground connector on our 4-way. You'll use the black wire from your sheathing to connect to the black wire on your 4-way connector, and you'll connect the white wire from the sheathing to the white wire on your 4-way connector. Just match up those colors and we'll be fully connected. Now with all of our wires connected, go ahead and connect your 4-way connector to your control box, and then you can zip tie the excess wire up out of the way. And plug it in there. The release tab is going to face away from the writing on top of your controller. Now take your excess wire and tuck it up in there and zip tie it up to tidy everything up. Go ahead and slide your grommet back over your wires. Once you've got your grommet back on, slide your sound insulator back over it, put it back in the firewall. Next we'll take the excess black wire that we had when we ran our wire to our brake controller, and we'll use that to connect our circuit breakers to our battery positive. Strip back wire on each end. You'll use a large eyelet on one end of the wire and a small eyelet on the other. You'll do this for both the wires that need to run to the circuit breaker. Now we'll connect the small eyelets to the copper studs on the circuit breaker. And then tighten those down using a 3/8 wrench. Now we're going to connect both large eyelets to our battery positive. Remove the bolt using a 10mm socket or wrench. Slide the bolt through both the large eyelets and tighten the bolt back down. Now with everything connected, we'll come back to our 7-way and make sure everything's working properly. As you can see here, we've got our power back to our 7-way. And now let's check out to make sure all of our signals and brakes are operating properly. We've got our left turn, right turn, brake lights, and brake controller. Once you've got your brake controller fully installed and powered up, when you turn it on, you'll notice it's flashing from blue to green. This indicates that it's in calibration mode. To get it out of calibration mode, you simply have to drive the vehicle. As you brake, it determines the direction in which the controller is mounted in the vehicle, and it senses the inertia of the vehicle being stopped. This must occur up to 20 times in order for it to properly calibrate itself for proportional mode. Once the calibration is completed, it will turn solid blue, indicating that it's set in proportional mode. Modes cannot be selected until the calibration is completed. Calibration can be performed both with and without a trailer connected. And that completes our installation of the REDARC Tow-Pro Elite Trailer Brake Controller on our 2009 Kodiak.